Buddy Holly, Rich Valens e Big Bopper. Três lendas do rock and roll que tiveram as carreiras interrompidas por um acidente de avião em 1959. Mais de 4 décadas depois da morte deles, criações como Peggy Sue, La Bamba e Chantilly Lace ainda animam as pistas de dança. No documentário O Dia em que a Música Morreu, você vai ver os grandes sucessos desses astros e saber como, em pouco tempo, eles influenciaram muito o cenário musical. Conheça a história de Buddy Holly, Rich Valens e J.P. Richardson, o Big Bopper.
A long, long time ago, I can still remember how that music used to make me smile. And I knew if I had my chance that I could make those people dance, and maybe they'd be happy for a while. But February made me shiver with every paper I deliver. Bad news on the doorstep, I couldn't take one more step. I can't remember if I cried when I read about his widowed bride, but something touched me deep inside the day the music died.
Em 2 de fevereiro de 1959, Buddy Holly, Rich Valens e J.P. Richardson, conhecido como Big Bopper, subiram ao palco do Surf Ballroom em Clear Lake, Iowa, e tocaram diante de uma casa lotada de adolescentes extasiados. Foi a maior noite que a cidadezinha conheceu. Para os três astros, seria a última noite de suas vidas.
Walking into the Surf Ballroom is like walking into a time machine. As you walk across an empty ballroom and you hear your footsteps just echo off the walls, you want to imagine Buddy Holly up there performing, Richie Valens up there performing, the Big Bopper, his ho-ho-hos in a long jacket. And you try to imagine that, you really do. It's a time machine.
I'm not going to get spiritual and say I have felt their presence and heard their songs and echoes in there, but I have stood on that stage and said, why did it happen that they had to die?
O rock and roll estourou no cenário musical em 1954 com Bill Haley e His Comets e Elvis Presley.
Rock and roll is cool, Daddy, and you know it.
O balanço da música country branca com o rhythm and blues negro inflamou os adolescentes.
Elvis was a white dude singing black music, black style. And when he was on the Ed Sullivan Show, and Buddy Holly saw him, he said, I can't believe somebody could do that on network television. And that just changed Buddy.
You knew, when you looked at him, he knew what he wanted. He wanted to be a singing star.
A rápida ascensão de Buddy Holly ao estrelato começou em 7 de setembro de 1936, com seu nascimento em Lubbock, Texas. O jovem Buddy vivia para a música e, em meados dos anos 50, era um prodigioso roqueiro adolescente, louco para deixar a sua marca.
He became very impatient when he seen other fellows about his age breaking into music like Elvis Presley and the Everly Brothers. He knew he was just as good or better than they were.
Buddy formou uma banda com seus amigos Jerry Ellison, Nick Sullivan e Joe B. Mauldin. Eles se chamaram os Crickets. Era 1957 e antes de o ano terminar, Buddy Holly seria um astro.
Buddy went to see The Searchers, a John Ford movie. John Wayne said every 30 minutes, every 15 minutes, 20 minutes, he would say, "That'll be the day, Pilgrim." Holly wrote the song.
Em setembro de 1957, That'll Be the Day tornara-se a terceira canção nas paradas de sucesso do país. Meses depois, Buddy obteve um novo grande sucesso com uma canção feita para a namorada do baterista Jerry Ellison.
Jerry said, well, let's put Peggy Sue's name on there, because at that time, I wasn't speaking to Jerry. So I think Buddy was kind of playing a little bit of Cupid.
A canção funcionou. Jerry e Peggy Sue se casaram e em apenas 4 meses a canção chegou às 10 mais, vendendo mais de 1 milhão de discos.
A big hit right from the start, or has it been sort of a long...
Well, we've had a few rough times, I guess you say, but we've been real lucky getting it this quick.
Well, Texas, nice to have you up here.
Thank
Let's
you.
have a very nice hand for these Texas records.
Com 2 sucessos escalando as paradas, Buddy e sua banda fizeram sua primeira turnê nacional ao lado de alguns dos maiores nomes do rock and roll. Chuck Berry, Fats Domino e Ed Cochran. Foi uma turnê estafante e quando terminou, Nick Sullivan largou os Crickets.
That tour took more out of me than anything I had ever done in my life. Think about your own self for a moment, that you had to work 21 hours a day, and that had gone on for about 5 months. Something has to give, and I gave.
Buddy e os Crickets prosseguiram como um trio e em janeiro de 1958 haviam obtido seu terceiro sucesso entre as 10 mais, em menos de um ano, Oh Boy.
What you got coming up in the future for records? Well, we've got one that was just released the other day by the Crickets called Oh Boy.
That'll mean that you've got 3 songs in our chart if that comes up. How do you think it compares with the others?
Well, I like Oh Boy better than That'll Be the Day, but of course I'm no judge.
Menos de um ano depois de começarem, Buddy e sua banda haviam se tornado grandes astros e sua fama se espalhara para a Inglaterra e a Austrália. Mas por mais rápido que o sucesso tenha chegado, não era rápido o suficiente para o rapaz de 21 anos.
He acted like he didn't have enough time to do what he wanted to do. I don't know whether he thought maybe his life would be cut short or his career would be cut short or he was just in a hurry to do something and get it over. He grew up in a hurry.
No verão de 1958, Buddy se apaixonou. E enquanto visitava Nova York, conheceu uma jovem que trabalhava em uma gravadora. Como de costume, agiu rápido e em 2 meses, ele e Maria Helena Santiago se casaram.
He proposed to her on their first date, and she asked him, or told him rather, or in her words, that you haven't known me long enough. He says, well, I haven't got time. That sounds like Buddy. I haven't got time.
Buddy mudou-se para Nova York para ficar junto de sua noiva e do centro da indústria da música, mas seus amigos Jerry Allison e Joe B. Mauldin permaneceram no Texas.
As the group started to split up, Buddy withdrew a little bit because he was hurt that we would walk away from all of this fame and fortune.
Oh, misery, misery.
Em dezembro de 1958, Buddy Holly era um jovem ansioso, sem banda e sem um novo sucesso.
Buddy had recorded some new songs which had come out and disappointed him as far as charts. He got up to the 50s and he got up to the 40s. He was not having number 1s and number 2s again.
Com a carreira em baixa, aos 22 anos, Buddy precisava de dinheiro.
He had a lot of holdings. He had a lot of publishing money due him and things like that, but he didn't have cash in his pocket.
A solução era fazer uma turnê para ajudar a promover a venda dos seus discos.
And the only tour at that time that he could have gone on was this Winter Dance Party tour.
He was forced to go on a tour he didn't really want to go on in a time of the year when he didn't want to do it in order to make money to pay the bills for his wife and a child that was going to come along.
I know that Buddy didn't want to go.
A trilha de sucessos de Buddy Holly, entre as 10 mais das paradas, acabou em 1958. Nesse mesmo ano, enquanto a estrela de Buddy perdia o brilho, 2 novos luminares do rock and roll ascendiam as paradas: Ritchie Valens e o Big Bopper.
Hello, baby. Yeah, this is the Big Bopper speaking.
O Big Bopper era o nome artístico de J.P. Richardson, um disc jockey de Beaumont, Texas, com talento para improvisos divertidos e jeito para compor canções.
He knew music. Not that he was an accomplished musician. He played the guitar, but he knew music. He had a feel for music.
Giles Perry Richardson, o Big Bopper, nasceu em 12 de outubro de 1930. Filho mais velho de um petroleiro, J.P. teve uma infância pobre.
His roots were quite humble. He had a close family, but certainly no economic good fortune in his life.
JP lutou durante toda a juventude para vencer na vida. Casado aos 21 anos, queria dar à sua família tudo aquilo que ele nunca tivera.
That's basically the reason he went to the music business. You know, if he could have probably made a couple of $100 a week in radio, that would have probably done him at the time. But he couldn't.
Em 58, aos 27 anos, Richardson comandava os sucessos no rádio. Um homem grande, com um grande senso de humor, ele notou a popularidade de músicas como The Witch Doctor e The Purple People Eater, canções que não faziam sentido, mas que rendiam muito dinheiro.
What he decided he was going to do was record a record which put these two characters together. And it was called The Purple People Eater Meets the Witch Doctor.
No lado B, ele gravou Chantilly Lace.
Chantilly lace and a pretty face and a ponytail hanging down, a wiggle in the walk and a giggle in the talk. Make the world go round.
Well, it caught on. It just simply caught on. The Purple People Eater Meets the Witch Doctor was immediately forgotten, and Chantilly Lace was the rage.
No outono de 58, ela estava entre as 10 mais. Era um dos discos mais tocados no país. A canção parecia que iria proporcionar a ele e a sua família a segurança financeira ansiada. Mas ele precisava promover o disco e, para fazê-lo, teve de cair na estrada com a sua música. Assim, em dezembro de 58, ele se juntou à turnê do Winter Dance Party.
He didn't like to be away from his family. That was the hardest thing in the world for him.
No aeroporto, ele abraçou a sua filha Débora, de 5 anos, e se despediu da mulher Titsi, que estava grávida de 6 meses de seu segundo filho.
She didn't want him to go, but they knew that this was a special thing for him. I mean, with Buddy and Richie and Dion and the Belmonts, and these are people that Mother had heard of and listened to, and it was quite an exciting thing for him.
Big Bopper seguiu então para o norte para se juntar ao grupo do Winter Dance Party. Para Rich Valens, de 17 anos de idade, o mais jovem astro da turnê, o Winter Dance Party era o ponto alto de uma carreira que estava começando a deslanchar.
He was so excited about the stars that he was going to meet, and he was very, very excited about meeting Buddy Holly.
Well, I got a gal named Sue. She knows just what to do.
You have to realize that his career was 8 months long. From the time he was discovered, he recorded the first album until February 3rd, 59. And he packed a lot of living into 8 months,
Daqui a pouco, a vida e os maiores sucessos de Rich Valens. E mais, a excursão pelo centro-oeste americano junto com Buddy Holly e Big Bopper. E o embarque dos 3 astros para o voo da morte num avião fretado. O dia em que a música morreu volta depois do intervalo.
It's all right when people say that those foolish kids can't be ready for the love that comes their way.
Rich Valens nasceu originalmente Richard Valenzuela em 13 de maio de 1941. O segundo de 5 irmãos, sua vida em Los Angeles foi difícil. Ele tinha apenas 10 anos quando seu pai morreu, deixando a família na pobreza.
It was a rough childhood. I would say a very rough childhood because in the first place he came from a very poor family.
These are small little wooden houses on wood sills, and under the house they'd scooped out so people were sleeping under there, and that's where Richie was sleeping.
His main goal in life was to make records so he could make money and buy his mom a new home, and that's all he talked about.
Richie começou a tocar guitarra ainda garoto e ao se tornar adolescente já começara a ganhar suas fãs.
All along, he knew he was going to be a star. He just knew it. At school, when we had concerts, he just rocked the place. I mean, we were rocking and rolling.
O estilo vigoroso de Richie atraiu a atenção do produtor de discos Bob King.
Here was this kind of a bull-like guy standing up there, a young fella, and he was cranking away on a guitar with a little beat-up amp, and it was just really cooking.
Ken assinou um contrato com Richie Valenzuela e tratou de mudar o seu nome.
being Latin could have been a very big deterrent for him, but fortunately I got the idea to change his name so nobody knew what he was before he got out there and got his face in front of people.
No verão de 1958, Ritchie lançou seu primeiro disco, Come On, Let's Go. No outono, ele já chegara às paradas de sucesso nacionais. O maior hit de Ritchie veio a seguir, uma canção dedicada à sua namorada, Donna.
He called me up on the telephone one night, and he said, I wrote a song for you.
I had a girl, Dawn was her name. Since she left me, I never been the same.
Enquanto Donna fazia as adolescentes desfalecerem, o lado B do disco, La Bamba, as fazia dançar.
Ritchie Valens was a very important figure. Ritchie Valens was the first Chicano rock and roll star.
I mean, he was truly a pioneer in that sense, and young. I mean, who knows what he would have gone on to do, given the cojones he had, but also the smarts that he had and the talent that he had.
À medida que a popularidade de Ritchie crescia, seu empresário Bob Kane fazia de tudo para mantê-lo na mira do público. Ele até lhe arrumou uma participação no filme de rock and roll Go Johnny Go. Em dezembro de 1958, apenas 7 meses depois de Ritchie ter sido revelado, Kane arrumou-lhe sua primeira grande turnê, o Winter Dance Party. A família e os amigos ficaram orgulhosos.
I had no fear that he would not return. I knew he would return.
Hi, everybody. This is Ritchie Valens. I will be on the Winter Dance Party coming your way very shortly. I will be having a ball singing for you, and I hope to see you all real soon.
Ritchie Valens estava empolgado em participar da turnê do Winter Dance Party em janeiro de 59.
Even though it was a Buddy Holly tour, he was really the #1 hot shot at that time because his record was really up there and getting an awful lot of airplay.
Antes de Ritchie partir para o Centro-Oeste, sua mãe deu uma festa na casa nova que o filho deu para ela.
And my father wouldn't let me go. I didn't forgive him for that for a long, long time.
A família de Ritchie o acompanhou ao aeroporto para vê-lo embarcar no voo para o Centro-Oeste.
The last time we saw him was at the airport. I would always run to the insurance to get insurance for him. And he says, I don't need that insurance, Tia. I don't need that insurance. Yes, you do. You're going to take it. And that was the last time we seen him when he left to Iowa on that tour.
I wish I had at least had an opportunity to have said goodbye.
The Winter Dance Party. A 3-week jaunt through the heart of the Midwest. The part of America that freezes solid in February. There was Ritchie Valens, the Big Bopper, Frankie Sardo, Dion and the Belmonts, and Buddy Holly, along with his 3 new sidemen, Waylon Jennings, Tommy Alsop, and Charlie Bunch.
Buddy Holly montara uma nova banda para a turnê de 59 do Winter Dance Party, da qual fazia parte um amigo, um disc-jockey texano chamado Waylon Jennings.
He'd gone downtown and bought a bass, and he said, you got 2 weeks to learn how to play that thing. I had no earthly idea what did what on a bass, but I memorized where I put my fingers on which songs.
Buddy também chamou o baterista Carl Bunch e o guitarrista Tommy Alsop. O Winter Dance Party estava pronto para partir.
When it was cold, cold. I don't know whose idea it was, but it really was a bad idea.
We were going down the road, and it was 40 below, and the bus froze up.
And there we sat in a snowstorm with the bus frozen. And that's not our drummer's feet got frostbite on the bus.
We got to where we hated that bus. We really did. But we were in showbiz.
3 weeks of one-night stands and all-night bus rides. 21 days of being bounced around the insides of a bus like ping-pong balls.
The problem was whoever scheduled the tour
You started way over here, went 400 miles to your next venue, and then went back 30 miles from the first one to do your third one, if you know what I'm trying to say. Hopscotching back and forth.
Enquanto o ônibus zigue-zagueava no gelado centro-oeste, os promotores da turnê preencheram uma data em aberto na excursão, marcando um show em Clear Lake, Iowa.
The General Artists Corporation called Mr. Carol Anderson at the Surf Ball and said, we have an open date. It's a little bit out of our way, but we can make it. The guys can drive the bus down to Mason City. Would you be interested in the show? And Carol said, Bob, I have a chance to bring in Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Booper. I said, book the show. Absolutely, just book it. And the ticket sales just took right off.
No 11º dia da turnê, após tocarem em 10 lugares, Buddy Holly, cansado, com frio e enjoado, queria se ver livre do ônibus e levar 2 de seus músicos consigo. E decidiu que depois do espetáculo em Clear Lake, eles voariam na frente até a próxima parada.
Well, we were on the bus, and he said, when we get to Clear Lake, he said, let's see if we can't charter a plane and fly up to Fargo, North Dakota.
He was actually doing it as just kind of as a favor to us, you know, where he could get in, get a little rest and everything.
Aquela tarde, o ônibus chegou a Clear Lake e os astros desceram exaustos.
When they came in here, they were almost frostbitten.
Big Bopper was running a fever. He was just perspiring profusely.
Buddy Holly tinha uma pergunta para o gerente do Surf Ballroom, Carol Anderson.
They wanted to get in and get ahead, and they asked me if there was a charter flight out of here.
They were tired, they were hungry. We got them some food, some at the Surf Ballroom. A couple of guys went across the street to the restaurant. And I remember Buddy getting off and asking, is there a laundromat around where we can get our clothes washed? And I guess it was the hour, there wasn't one, or it was closed or something, but I remember they could not get clothes washed there at that particular time.
That was the reason that Buddy wanted to fly, you know, so he could get some laundry done. Because we'd been out 12 days and our shirts were starting to stand up on their own, you know.
Os astros podiam estar exauridos, mas 1.500 adolescentes locais estavam prontos para chacoalhar.
Well, we arrive at the Surf Ballroom and the line was already there and the parents are lined up and people are waiting to get in and to buy tickets, and they just poured into the Surf Ballroom.
The floor was about 3/4 full, solid with people, up to and a few of them sat around in the first row of booths around here.
It was a big night. Nobody in that area, Northeast Iowa, had ever seen stars this big in their life. And for all of these youngsters, and for this young kid disc jockey, it was the biggest thrill of my life.
Às 8 horas da noite, as cortinas se abriram no palco do Surf Ballroom.
Hello, baby. Yeah, this is the Big Bopper speaking.
The Big Bopper came out. And he did his telephone routine and had everybody laughing.
Will I what? Oh, baby, you know what I like. Chantilly lace and a pretty face and a ponytail hanging down.
After him, we had Richie Valens.
Well, next song I'll do for you is named Donna.
Oh, my gosh. The girls went crazy over Richie Valens.
I had a girl, Donna was her name. Since she left me, I never been the same. 'Cause I love my girl, Donna.
And he was about 4 seconds into his music, and it was as Richie had been there all his life.
He was just shy, you know. But what was wild is he was wild on stage, you know. It was like two different people.
He just warmed to the kids and had everybody singing and dancing, of course, till La Bamba. And I don't know how many times he had to sing that.
It was a real up night. Everybody was rocking and everybody having a good time, you know.
I'm gonna tell you how it's gonna be. You're gonna give your love to me.
When Buddy first started, there was that just constant cheering and yelling and cheering and yelling.
With all the kids screaming, you could just barely hear your amps. It was kind of wild, you know.
Oh, well, you know my love and
when he changed the mood, he'd go into a bit of a quiet tune. Everybody would hush and listen to it.
Well, all right, so I'm being foolish. Well, all right, let people know about the dreams and wishes you wish in the night when...
Eles incendiaram o palco até a meia-noite. Enquanto tocavam, Carol Anderson telefonou para o Dwyer Flying Service, a fim de fretar um avião para Buddy e sua banda. O avião podia transportar até 3 passageiros a $36 por cabeça. Quando a cortina desceu, Buddy, Waylon e Tommy Alsop correram para pegar o seu voo até a próxima parada da turnê.
Word got around amongst the performers that Holly and his 2 sidemen were going to fly out instead of busing it. The Big Bopper couldn't stand the thought of those 430 frozen miles between Clear Lake and Moorhead, next stop on the tour. He made a deal with Waylon Jennings.
He had the flu real bad. He asked me, would you let me have your place on the plane? I said, well, if it's all right with Buddy, it's okay with me.
It's funny how, 2 minutes in a life can turn around several people's lives. Yeah, Dad was about 20 pounds lighter. He might have been able to fit on that bus somewhere and get comfortable. Who knows? May never have asked.
There's a thing that happened that night. Buddy was leaning back against the wall in his cane bottom chair laughing at me because he says, you're not going on the plane tonight, huh? I said, no. He said, well, I hope your old bus freezes up. And I said, well, again, and I said, well, I hope your old plane crashes, Now, I was awful young, and it took me a long time to get over that.
Buddy, o Big Bopper e Tommy Alsop se preparavam para partir e Tommy resolveu checar o camarim uma última vez, dando de encontro com Rich Valens.
Rich was standing there signing autographs. For some reason, he said, you gonna let me fly? And I just flipped a 50-cent piece and said, call it, and he called heads.
Rich ganhou na moedinha um lugar no avião. Vento gelado soprava do nordeste quando Carol Anderson levou Buddy Holly, Rich Valens e o Big Bopper para o aeroporto de Mason City. O piloto Roger Peterson, 21 anos, os aguardava em um monomotor Beechcraft Bonanza.
February 3rd, 1959. Just past midnight, Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Richie Valens climbed aboard a single-engine, 4-seater Beechcraft Bonanza at Mason City Airport, Iowa.
6-4, Mike, affirmative.
The Big Bopper and Richie Valens crawled in the back 2 seats of the plane, and I shook hands with each one of them as they got in and wished them well. And the pilot got in. I said, have a nice trip. And Buddy Holly come up, and he was the last one to get in. I held the door open. Shook hands with Buddy Holly, and I said, I wish you only the best. And he says, thanks.
When they left the surf ballroom, the stars were shining. It was a cold, crisp northern Iowa night. My wife and I got in our car to drive home. As we're driving, the snow starts to come in right across the road, right across our lights. And I remember vividly saying to my wife, look at that. The snow is incredible. It's coming right straight across the road. I hope the guys got off the ground before the storm came into town.
O Instituto de Meteorologia enviou um aviso sobre tempo ruim na rota do avião, mas o piloto Roger Peterson não recebeu a informação.
Mason City traffic, Bonanza 3794, November, taxiing runway 17.
It was cold and windy, snowing. Time, not quite 1 a.m. Peterson aimed the plane towards heaven.
3794, November, taking off, runway 17.
It looked to me like it was a perfect takeoff. We crawled back into the car and started up and made a turn. I looked in that direction, and I seen the lights disappear. Then I thought maybe it's a curvature of the Earth or something like that, or an illusion that I had, but it wasn't.
O avião, carregando 3 dos maiores astros do rock and roll, havia desaparecido na escuridão. Na madrugada de 3 de fevereiro de 1959, um avião transportando Buddy Holly, o Big Bopper, e Rich Valens levantou o voo num céu invernal de Iowa.
The next morning, about 7:15, the phone rang, and I was still home, and it was Mr. Dwyer, and he says, Carol, he said, our party that went out last night never got to park.
O DJ Bob Hale estava na estação de rádio KIRD.
And while I was on, a little after 9 o'clock, the bulletin bell rang on the UPI telling us that there was wreckage found of a light aircraft outside the Mason City Clear Lake Airport. And I broke in with that bulletin. I didn't even think about the plane from the night before. Didn't even dawn on me. And I just read the bulletin, and we went on with music. And about 30 seconds later, the phone rang. It was Carol Anderson, the manager of the Surf Ballroom. He said, Bob, I've just been out to that wreckage site of that airplane you had the bulletin on. I said, why were you there? He said, to identify the bodies. I said, what do you mean? And he said, Bob, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and JP are dead. Their plane crashed. They're dead.
Trying to put together a story of a happy success for three young singers that ended in a very sad death this morning early in the cornfield near Mason City in Clear Lake, Iowa.
O avião caiu minutos após a decolagem a apenas 8 quilômetros do aeroporto.
The official cause listed way back then by the FAA was pilot error. I don't believe that, because this young pilot knew that airplane, or Jerry Dwyer would not have put him in that airplane. I am convinced that it's that storm that caused the plane crash.
They knocked the snow off the roof of a house about a mile back, and that plane just gradually went into the ground.
The one wing had hit the ground and tore out a chunk of ground about 4 inches deep and about 3 foot long. And that was frozen solid, that ground. And from then on, it was just a corkscrew. I mean, it just end over end over end. And it all ended up along a line fence there. All the cables were wrapped around, the tail was up in the air.
Os 3 astros foram ejetados do avião. O corpo do piloto Roger Peterson ficou preso dentro das ferragens retorcidas.
I've seen 2 bodies land just 12 to 15 feet from the airplane. One was Buddy Holly and one was Richie Valens. And I said to Sheriff Allen, where's the third one? He said, across the line or the fence there, about 40 rows of corn in, the Big Bopper lays over there.
This is a day that ended in tragedy for 3 of the biggest names in the music business. The names in order of bigness probably would be Richie Valens, Buddy Holly of the Crickets, and also the Big Bopper.
O Big Bopper tinha 28 anos de idade, Buddy Holly 22 e Richie Valens apenas 17 anos de idade.
I had KFWB on, and just as I passed the front of the palladium, I'll never forget it. The disc jockey said, and now the late, great Richie Valens. And it was just like somebody had hit me in the stomach with a baseball bat. I really had a tremendous physical reaction.
The announcer said 3 top rock and roll singers have been killed, and one of them is Richie Valens. I mean, I was terrified. I screamed and I couldn't. It's pretty hard to even talk about it.
We had a schoolmate come and say, aren't you Richie Valens' sister? And I was like, yeah, well, he's dead. And I looked at them and I said, no way, my brother's not dead, you're just jealous. And they go, well, we heard it on the news. And when I got home, Mama was sitting in a chair surrounded by people, and I knew it was true. I just ran to her and I said, not Richie. Mama, no. And I just remember, falling on my knees and burying my head in her lap.
I was so sure that that wasn't him on the plane. I was so sure that it was wrong, that I'd call the house or I'd go over there and everything would be fine. It wouldn't be him. He was on the bus. But it was wrong.
No Texas, o ex-guitarrista dos Crickets, Nick Sullivan, soube da notícia por um fã e pediu à sua mãe para telefonar para a mãe de Buddy a fim de confirmá-la.
And when Mrs. Holly answered, I remember we were close to 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. Is it true what I heard about Buddy? Mrs. Holly, Buddy's mother, said, oh, I don't know. What? My God, she didn't know. She had no idea.
My wife told me, you better get out of your work clothes and put on some clean clothes and go over to your mother's house. And I said, why? She wouldn't tell me for a little while, and then she said, well, we heard over the radio that Buddy was in a plane crash. And I said, is he alive? She said, I don't know. She said, I think they said that everyone was dead. And so that's the way we got the news. It was on the air before we ever were notified.
O ex-baterista dos Crickets, Jerry Ellison, e sua mulher Peggy Sue logo ficaram sabendo.
Jerry was devastated, just paralyzed. It was just like turning the lights out. You know, it's like the sun didn't shine, and if it did, who cared? It just had all, it had just stopped.
A mulher de Buddy, Maria Helena, ficou arrasada quando soube do desastre. Poucos meses depois, ela perderia o bebê que carregava. Em Beaumont, Texas, o melhor amigo de J.P. Richardson acabara de chegar em casa após o seu turno na emissora de rádio quando recebeu o telefonema.
I was stunned. I was numb. I immediately got up and went to the radio station, and it was confirmed that the crash had occurred and that J.P. had perished. And it was the day that our lives stopped.
And there's someone who's watching over you tonight.
Later, I did talk with his wife. It was very difficult for Titi to accept J.P.'s death.
I mean, she was very young, had a 5-year-old daughter, 6 months pregnant with me, and this terrible thing took her husband away.
She could see the end of the rainbow within sight, and it was immediately grabbed away from her.
Over you tonight.
Depois do intervalo, você vai descobrir por que o rock and roll teve o futuro ameaçado com as mortes de Big Bopper, Ritchie Valens e Buddy Holly. E ainda, os filmes que reviveram Buddy Holly e Ritchie Valens nas décadas de 70 e 80. E o filho de Big Bopper, que imita o pai. Daqui a pouco, na parte final do documentário, o dia em que a música morreu.
It's all right when people say that those foolish kids can't be ready for the love that comes their way.
Aproximadamente a 1h da manhã de 3 de fevereiro de 1959, Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens e o Big Bopper morreram em um desastre de avião. Mais tarde de manhã, os demais participantes do Winter Dance Party chegaram à próxima parada de sua turnê e foram recebidos com a dura notícia.
The road manager and I walked in the hotel, and there was a TV in the lobby, and there was a picture of the Big Bopper on TV. I said, put me in a room next to Buddy Holly. He said, are you at that show? And I said, yeah. He said, well, then you know those guys got killed in a plane crash. I said, what? He said, just like that. He said, yeah, those guys got killed in a plane crash this morning, so, you know, just bam, we knew about
it. J.P. Richardson was dead, and I was alive. And because he was dead, I was alive.
Apesar da tristeza com a morte dos 3 artistas, a turnê continuou e aquela noite, Waylon Jennings teve de tomar o lugar de seu amigo Buddy e cantar as canções dele.
I mean, I just wanted to go home. You know, I'd never faced anything like that. I'd never known anyone that close to who had died.
Crying, waiting, hoping you'll come back. I just can't seem to get you off my mind.
Adolescentes do país e do mundo inteiro ficaram atordoados ao saberem que 3 dos mais talentosos astros do rock and roll haviam morrido em um desastre aéreo.
A lot of the kids, the boys particularly, were already wearing black armbands, and did you hear what happened? They wouldn't even say it out loud, they were whispering it. And it hit us real hard.
very, very hard.
I was standing in my living room and came on the radio. The plane went down last night, taking 3 rock and roll players, J.P. Richardson, known as the Big Bopper, Ritchie Valens, and Buddy Holly. And I remember my stomach dropped. And I was standing in this position, my shoulders down, and like you're the radio, shoulders down like this, and I looked at it like that. And I stood there for about 15, 20 minutes, didn't move.
In '59, as a paper boy, I went and cut open these papers one day, and there it said, Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper and Ritchie Valens had been killed in a plane crash. I remember it was just like somebody took and punched me right in the face. I just couldn't believe it.
It took the best people off of that tour. It took the best people. I'm talking about kind, good-hearted people that you can't imagine them being bad to somebody. And it took their lives. And I never understood that, and to this day, when I think about that, it makes me a little bit mad.
Given the situation in rock and roll in 1959, the plane crash could have been almost a lethal blow. Elvis was in the Army. Chuck Berry had a little bit of trouble with an underage girl. Jerry Lee Lewis's career was in eclipse because he had married his teenage cousin. Little Richard had decided he didn't want to play rock and roll anymore, and he had joined the ministry. So, the deaths of Buddy Holly and Ritchie Valens and the Big Bopper was kind of an exclamation point to this whole period. That plane crash nearly helped bury rock and roll, and we were stuck for a couple of years with a lot of teen idols that didn't have much backbone to their sound, until the Beatles came over here and saved our souls.
A música pop evoluiu dos ídolos adolescentes aos Beatles e no início dos anos 70, as canções de Holly, de Valens e do Big Bopper haviam sido relegadas a sucessos do passado. Então, John McLean escreveu sobre o dia em que a música morreu.
I started singing Bye Bye Miss American Pie.
American Pie speaks to the loss that we feel. That's why that song has found the niche that it has.
Singing this'll be the day that I die.
Uma década após as mortes de Buddy Holly, de Ritchie Valens e do Big Bopper, lembranças da tragédia inspiraram a canção que se tornaria um hino pop.
When 1970 came around and I was now beginning to make records, I suddenly began to write about Buddy Holly and remembering what happened. And started out with, a long, long time ago.
Long, long time ago, I can still remember how that music used to make me smile.
Shortly after Buddy died, like the next year, my father died. And I had been still trying to come to terms with my father's death and with Buddy Holly's death and with all these things that had happened. And so I put this in the song.
Bad news on the doorstep. I couldn't take one more step. I can't remember if I cried when I read about his widowed bride. But something touched me deep inside the day the music died. So bye, bye, Miss American Pie.
I only dedicated the album to Buddy. I never said it was about him, but radio people sensed right away that there was this connection with the day the music died and the dedication on the album. They would play American Pie, and they played That'll Be the Day. And I remember hearing that on the radio and thinking, well, this is great. This is amazing, what music can do. I'm bringing Buddy back to everybody.
How do you believe in rock and roll? Can music save your mortal soul? And can you teach me how to dance real slow?
American Pie tocou fundo e em janeiro de 1972, 13 anos após o trágico desastre, tornou-se o disco mais vendido no país.
I was on a boat and I heard that song once down in Fort Lauderdale. And I started crying. That's how much the song means to me. Not only to me, it means a lot to others as well.
McLean, with one really deft brushstroke, brought it all back home to people and helped put those performers back on the map.
Singing bye, bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye and singing this'll be the day that
Embora
I
o hino de Don McLean, American Pie, lembrasse aos fãs do rock and roll do dia em que a música morreu, foi um filme que trouxe Buddy Holly de volta à vida.
All of my love, all of my kissing, you don't know what you've been missing, oh boy.
I discovered Buddy when I was in the 6th grade. Holly's music was such a force in my life because it lifted me. It made me feel good. It made me feel strong.
All of my life I've been waiting. Tonight there'll be no
Gary Busey havia idolatrado Buddy Holly por mais de 20 anos. Em 78, ele teve a oportunidade de retratar o seu herói no filme The Buddy Holly Story. A transformação de Busey em Buddy Holly lhe rendeu uma indicação para o Oscar de melhor ator.
And I had these glasses to look through with my hair all curled up and permanent. And there was no more Gary Busey. I couldn't find Gary Busey in the movie. So I will tell you this, that playing Buddy Holly was the first experience I had making film. In fact, it's the only experience I've had making film where the spirit was with me and wrapped itself around me.
Gary Busey não foi o único tocado pelo espírito de Holly. Para a viúva de Buddy, Maria Helena, o filme mexeu com emoções profundas.
I met Maria Elena when the movie premiered, and she started weeping and left during the song, Just You Know Why, True Love Ways. I thought, boy, we really messed up, but no, Buddy was in the room with her.
You know why, just you and I know true love way.
Uma década mais tarde, em 1987, La Bamba ressuscitou a memória de Ritchie Valens. Ao pesquisar para representar o papel principal do filme, Lou Diamond Phillips envolveu-se emocionalmente com a família de Ritchie.
For me and for the family, and in a very weird way, in a very sort of existential way, it was Ritchie all over again. Ritchie was there.
I know I put Lou through some stuff. I mean, he did become Ritchie to me for those 3 months.
The only time it ever became a real issue and it became a difficulty was the night that we shot the scene where Marshall Crenshaw playing Buddy Holly and myself and Stephen Lee as the Big Bopper get into the plane to take off, to fly away. It was Connie. She came to the set, which might not have been such a good idea for her.
Hey, Richie, relax, man. Everything's cool. Besides, the sky belongs to the stars, right?
She just starts trembling and she says to me, "Why did you go? Why did you have to go? Richie, why did you have to go?" And she throws herself onto me and she's crying and I'm holding her and she's just sobbing over and over. "Why did you have to go? Why did you have to go?" And it was, I was lost at that time. I had no idea what to do.
There was so much pain still that we had never been able to just let out. We had never really been able to grieve because everybody used to tell us, be quiet, don't cry. And with La Bamba, all of us were able to finally, I guess, accept, let go.
Ao passo que as filmagens de La Bamba foram uma experiência purificadora para a família de Ritchie Valens, para o filho do Big Bopper, nascido 3 meses após a morte do pai, conciliar-se com a tragédia tem sido mais difícil.
I wasn't raised knowing that my father was somebody special. I just know that when I got into my teenage years, I asked questions, and I wasn't given answers.
O filho do Big Bopper também fez perguntas a Bob Hale sobre as últimas horas de seu pai no Surf Ballroom.
At that particular time, Buddy's wife was expecting, the Bopper's wife was expecting, and my wife was expecting. And while we were sitting there, J.P. Richardson said to my wife, "Kathy, may I put my hand on your tummy?" And she said, "Sure." She said, "This is what I miss most about being on the road, feeling my baby move in my wife's tummy." And when I told this story to JP's son a few years ago, the tears just flowed. Because he said, "Bobby, I'm trying to find out who my daddy is. And he said, now I know my daddy loved me before I was born. That's what I remember most about that night.
Chantilly lace and a pretty face and a ponytail.
You know, Dad's, he's more than a footnote to Buddy Holly's death and Ritchie Valens' death. Chantilly Lace was released in August of '58. Dad was killed less than 6 months later. The song lives today, and does it live?
Oh, baby, that's what I like!
Hoje em dia, JP mantém vivo o legado de rock and roll de seu pai com a sua própria banda.
Kids, their mother or father pass on, leave them a hardware store, real estate, big fat chunk of change. My dad left me his name and maybe a little bit of his voice. White lightning.
4 décadas depois do desastre, a música de 3 dos pioneiros do rock and roll continua viva.
Let me in, honey. This is the Big Bopper knocking.
The Big Bopper's music is heard in any rock band that wants to get a little goofy now and then. He was the clown prince of his day. Ritchie Valens can be heard in the music of Los Lobos, in the music of every rock and roll band that features a Latino performer.
Oh, the little things you say and do make me want to be with you.
Buddy Holly's everywhere. He's everywhere. Anytime some kid plugs a Fender guitar into an amp, he's there.
Well, all right, so I'm being foolish. Well, all right, let people know about the dreams and wishes you wish in the night when lights are low. Well, all right, we'll live and love with all our might. Well, all right, our lifetime love will be all right. Well, all right, so I'm going steady. It's all right when people say that those foolish kids can't be ready for the love